What's up, guys? Happy Halloween! And welcome to day 14, the final day of the 12 days of Hallow's Eve. So today, I'm going to be reading as many scary stories as I can to you guys in honor of celebrating Halloween. Starting with the first one, it's called Step Step. When I was a kid, my parents would sometimes bring me down to my aunt and uncle's place to stay for the weekend. Mainly I spent the time playing with my two cousins who were around the same age as me. They lived on a small farm with plenty of open space, and we could run around doing pretty much whatever we wanted. If we thought we could get away with it, the three of us would sometimes cross over to the neighboring farm about half a mile away. It had been abandoned for decades, with a scattering of derelict buildings and other structures still standing on the property, just begging to be explored. This was, of course, a gold mine for three adventurous young boys such as ourselves, especially after my cousins told me stories about how the place was haunted. It was pretty classic fare. Man goes crazy, axe murders his entire family, hangs himself, returns every night as an angry spirit looking for new victims. Good, grisly stuff. Even at the age, I knew they were probably making it up, or at least embellishing old rumors, but seeing as how the setting lent itself so well to such tales, I allowed myself to buy into it. One afternoon, we decided to play hide and seek. When it was my turn to hide, I ran off for a flimsy brown barn that had living headquarters on top, and climbed the stairs looking for a good spot. There was still furniture inside, musty and rotting, and personal belongings lay scattered across the floor. I maneuvered over broken dishes, tattered clothes, and crumbling books, eventually coming to a small bedroom with a closet. Jackpot! There were even long black dresses still hanging on the rod that I could hide behind. I stepped inside and managed to force shut the folding door. My only illumination was a slit of sunlight that shone through the crack in the door from a nearby window. I crouched down with knees tucked into chest and waited. Some time passed, and there was still no sign of my seekers. I waited some more, debating if and when I should give myself up. After nearly an hour, this was starting to get boring. My head dropped. I awoke with a jerk. It was pitch black, drowsy and confused. I forgot for a minute where I was, or what I'd been doing as it slowly came back to me. The realization that it was now night, and that I'd been abandoned here filled me with a sinking dread in the pit of my stomach. I tried to get up, but a sudden cramp in my calf kept me grounded. I squirmed about, waiting for it to pass, when I heard a door slamming shut downstairs and instantly froze. Was it one of my cousins? There was a brief period of silence, then footsteps at the bottom of the stairs, but not just footsteps. I thought it, too, after every other step. There weren't the footfalls of a child. They were slow, heavy, and deliberate. Step, 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 step. I held my breath, praying they would go away. They did not. The noises continued to ascend until they reached the top of the staircase. Step, 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 step. After another moment of silence, the walking resumed, this time along with a steady scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floorboards. Step, step, scrape, step, step, scrape, step, step, scrape. The footsteps made their way through the debris and wandered aimlessly through various rooms. I thought I could smell something faintly putrid. The constant scrape sent cold shivers carousing down my arms and back. My worst fears were realized when the steps reached the bottom of the doorway, the bedroom doorway. Step, step, scrape, step, step, scrape, step, step, scrape. They got closer and closer, and finally stopped directly in front of the closet door. I couldn't see a thing. After an agonizing pause, they continued on. over to the other side of the room, and out the doorway again. They faded away down the hallway. Step, step, scrape. Step, step, scrape. Step, step, scrape. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. There were no more sounds now, and I was trying to build up enough courage to open the door and flee. Three things happened simultaneously. Just then, I was bombarded with a smell I can only describe as fresh roadkill. I heard raspy breathing behind me in the dark closet, and I felt hot breaths against the nape of my neck. That was enough for me to hurl myself out of the confines of that nightmarish space, relying on memory and scant moonlight to navigate through the darkened house. All the while I heard footsteps chasing me behind me, closing in with a terrifying speed. Step, 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 step. It was clumsy, torturous escape, full of trips and bumps and blind stumbling. I never looked back, at least not until I had burst out the front door and into the country night. And when I did turn around, I saw absolutely nothing. There were no more footsteps, and nobody was chasing me. That didn't stop me from running through all the way back to my aunt and uncle's house. There was a police car in the driveway when I got back. My parents were there too, worried sick, everybody demanding to know where I had been. Apparently when my cousins still hadn't found me by evening, they returned home to tell their parents. Eventually, the police were called in and informed me that they had already scoured every building on the farm. Insinuation that I was lying about my whereabouts didn't go unnoticed. None of it made any sense. It wasn't until years later that one of my cousins filled in the final place of the story. He and his brother had spent hours searching for me, like they said. But the part they didn't tell anyone was that they spotted me in the window of the bedroom I was hiding in. When they got closer, they saw that it wasn't me. The young boy neither of them recognized was smiling and waving down at them and gesturing for them to come upstairs. That's when they ran back home. All this while I was asleep in the closet. And that is Step Step. Alright, the next story we'll be reading is a story called Escape. My stepfather always hated me. When my mother married him and he moved into our house, my life became a living hell. He found fault with every little thing I did and was constantly shouting at me and calling me names. In his eyes, I could never do anything right. Pretty soon, all the chaos at home began to affect my schoolwork. I found it impossible to study, and my grades started slipping. At the dinner table, I was so nervous that I hardly ate a thing. I gradually withdrew into myself and stopped hanging around with my friends. Things began to grow worse and worse. I became my stepfather's punching bag. He started beating me at the slightest excuse. He was a strong man, and I was too small to fight him off. Each punch and kick he delivered hurt me emotionally, as well as physically. It wasn't long before I was diagnosed with depression, and the doctors put me on medication. Through all this, my mother stood by and refused to intervene. She chose her new husband over me. That hurt me more than anything else. I gave up hope and prayed for the day when I could escape. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and ran away from home. I went as far as the city. When the police found me and brought me home, they took me back to my house. My stepfather was standing at the door waiting for me. His face was twisted in anger and rage. As soon as the police left, he turned to me and said, "Did you think you could escape?" That night he beat me twice as bad as before. I cried myself to sleep. After that, the violence escalated. Every evening when he came home from work, I tried to avoid him, but it was no use. He began inventing excuses to beat me. I never understood how anyone could be so mean and cruel. It seemed like it was all a big game to him. Each time he hit me, I could see how much he was enjoying it. My body was covered in bruises, and it hurt to breathe. Eventually, he went too far. One evening, he beat me so badly that I couldn't move. I just lay on the floor of my bedroom, staring at the ceiling. I didn't know it at the time, but I was bleeding internally. My mother begged him to bring me to the hospital, but he just ignored her. He said I was faking it. During the night, I lay on the floor of my bedroom, moaning in pain and slowly slipping into unconsciousness. The next morning, my mother came to check on me. By then, I was already dead. Time passed. I don't know how much time passed. Suddenly, I saw a bright light. I heard a voice announce, "It's my healthy baby boy." I started crying loudly. Slowly, ever so slowly, I opened my eyes. A man and a woman were staring at me. They were smiling from ear to ear. The man leaned down and touched my cheek. In a gentle voice, he said, "Did you think you could escape?" Alright. The next scary story is called Left Behind. Do you ever get that nagging feeling that you've forgotten something? You know that feeling when you've left something behind, but you can't remember what it was. It was just after 6 when I left the office and walked to the bus stop. As I stood there waiting for the bus to arrive, I had a strange sense of unease. I felt as if I had left something important behind, but I couldn't think what it was. Maybe it's nothing. I tried to assure myself something was nagging at me. I felt like going back to check, but I was too tired. I just wanted to go home. When the bus came, I piled in with the other passengers. As usual, all the seats were taken. I clung to the handrail as the bus lurched back and forth. I bumped into the man behind me, and I said, "I'm sorry," but he just looked away. More and more. I felt that I had left something important at the office. The farther the bus carried me from the office, the more certain I became of it. I went over the day in my mind. I thought about my creepy boss staring at me all day. I thought about the other secretaries gossiping about how he had a crush on me. I thought about the letters he told me to post. Had I forgotten them? Of course not. I thought about the meetings I had to schedule. Had I scheduled them? Of course. I racked my brain for some clue as to what I had forgotten. I told myself that I would feel better when I got home, with an uneasy feeling wouldn't leave me. I got off the bus at my usual stop, but when I came to the lane that led to my house, I finally gave in. It's no use. I thought this was bee nagging at me all night. I have to go back to the office and see what it was that I overlooked. As tired as I was, I made my way back to the bus stop, back to the office. I was just doing this to put my mind at ease. As I got off the bus, I heard the clock strike 7. I walked quickly up to the side street to the office and turned the key in the door. Quickly I ran up the stairs. When I opened the office door, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. To my horror, I recognized what it was I had left behind. It was me. My body was lying, strangled on the floor. Alright, this next story I'm going to be reading is called The Other Me, and it's true. Months ago, my girlfriend and I got engaged. We moved into a new apartment and began living together. So, it's a boyfriend-girlfriend that got engaged, so now they're fiancés. It was the first time either of us had shared an apartment, so it was a new experience for both of us. We were deeply in love. I knew she was the one for me. I wanted to spend the rest of my life, and I thought she felt the same about me. Everything went well until 2 weeks ago when I noticed that my girlfriend was acting very strangely. She became so attached to me that it felt like she couldn't stand being away from me for a moment. One evening she said to me, "Darling, when you're not at home, I still feel you're near me." I didn't attach much importance to these words. I thought she was just being affectionate. However, a few days later, she told me something else. "Whenever you're at work," she said, "I often hear a voice, as if you are calling my name." This began to happen more and more. As the days went by, I started to get a little worried about her. One day when I arrived home from work, I found her sitting silently at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall with a glazed look in her eyes. I grabbed a chair and sat down beside her and asked her what was the matter. "I think there's something wrong with me," she murmured. "Why do you think that?" I asked. "I saw you today," she said. "You walked from the kitchen into the bedroom, and then you stood back to me, staring out the window." "But I was at work all day," I said. "I know," she replied with a sigh. That's when I really began to worry. I suspected that my girlfriend was losing her mind, starting to have hallucinations. Over the next few days, she kept telling me that she saw me in the apartment when I was at work. She could even describe exactly what I was wearing. My girlfriend was also acting more and more strange. She was getting more and more quiet. She was terrified of being left alone. Sometimes she would just sit there, silently staring at me. Last night my girlfriend was very tired and decided to go to bed early. I held her hand and sat on the edge of the bed as she was falling asleep. Just before she nodded off, she said, "You're not here." "Honey, I'm right here," I replied. "Don't worry, everything's fine." "No, you're not here," she said. "You're in the kitchen." Just then, I heard a dull noise coming from the kitchen. It sounded like a chair scraping across the linoleum. Then I heard the sound of footsteps walking down the hallway. Fear gripped my heart. I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, the handle on the bedroom door began to turn, and the door slowly began to open. Maybe it's just a draft? I thought as my eyes grew wide with fear. But it wasn't a draft. The door swung open, and I saw a man standing there in the doorway. It was me. I think I'm a clone now. It's difficult to describe exactly what I saw. It was me, but at the same time it wasn't me. It was as if I was staring at myself in a mirror, but the other me had cold, lifeless eyes. The other me looked at me for a moment, then turned and left, shutting the door behind him. It took me a moment to recover from the shock, and then I sprang off the bed and ran after him. The hallway was empty. I checked the kitchen and the bathroom, but he was nowhere to be found. The other me simply vanished. It was terrifying. And then as I stood in the hallway, trying to figure out what had just happened, trying to calm myself down and convince myself that it was just a hallucination, I heard a faint voice coming from the kitchen. It wasn't my voice. It was the voice of my girlfriend. "We are here to stay," she said. "Forever." I realized that my girlfriend was in the kitchen. She was lying in the bedroom, exactly where I had left her just seconds before. I was so frightened, I started trembling like a leaf. I ran into the bedroom, grabbed my girlfriend, and dragged her with me. Out the front door, we left the apartment that very moment and spent the night in my parents' house. Tomorrow we will go back to pick up our things. I still can't understand what happened in that apartment, but neither of us can bear to spend another night there. Hopefully when we pick up our things, all will be well and no one will be there. Okay, there's... And, yeah. I'll give you guys 4 stories. Here, let me just try to find one. I'll be right back. Okay, I have 10 minutes left on my camera. I think that's what it says. Yeah, 10 minutes left, so I'm going to read you guys one more story. It's a short story, and it's called Older Sister. Yeah, alright, let's get started. I always wanted a little sister when my parents brought Sarah home. It was the happiest day of my life. She was so cute. I couldn't wait to share my toys with her. She slept in my mother and father's room for the first couple of days. She cried a lot at first. She cried so loud that sometimes she would keep us all awake at night. I'm surprised the neighbors didn't hear her. Eventually, Daddy made a bedroom for her in the basement. He also built a bed for her with bars so she couldn't get out. Sometimes I would creep down to the basement just to look at her. I'd see her lying there with her eyes open, just staring at the ceiling. My parents told her not to give her anything sharp in case she hurt herself. I passed her some of my toys through the bars, but she just threw them away and started crying again. She didn't seem to care for toys much. I went to school during the week, but Sarah had to stay home. Mommy said she wasn't ready for school yet. When I came home, I always tell Sarah all about the stuff I learned that day. I drew pictures of us playing together. I'll never forget the day I came home from school and Sarah was nowhere to be found. Her bed was empty, and all her clothes were gone. Mom was just sitting at the kitchen table smoking a cigarette. She looked really sad. When I asked her where Sarah was, she started crying. Sarah's gone, she sobbed. I didn't understand. We need to find her, I cried. My mother just shook her head. Sarah's dead. She's in heaven now. Daddy took her bed apart. He threw away all the drawings I had done for her. My parents never talked about Sarah again, and they refused to mention her name. It was as if she never existed. I was puzzled by their behavior. Then one Saturday morning, my mother took me to the shopping with her. She had a package to mail, so we stopped at the post office while my mother queued up to buy stamps. I looked at all the posters on the walls. My eyes settled on one poster in particular. It was a picture of Sarah. She was just as cute as I remembered. Underneath her picture, there was some writing. It read, "Missing. Sarah Winfield, age 16, abducted from her home in 2011. If you have any information regarding her whereabouts, please contact the police immediately." Yeah. Yeah. Weird. And scary too. Ugh. Alright, how much time do I have left now? 6 minutes? Okay. Alright. I'll read you guys one final story. And I'll make it quick too. And this is a true ghost story. It's called The Gray Lady. The Gray Lady is about a ghost that haunts Willard Library in Evansville, Indiana. The first sighting of the Gray Lady ghost in Willard Library happened in 1937 at 3 a.m. That night. The janitor at the children's library entered the basement to check the furnace. He was so startled by what he saw that he dropped his flashlight. It was the ghostly figure of an odd lady clothed in a long gray dress, a gray shawl, gray shoes, and a gray hat and veil. As he watched, the figure dissolved into the shadows. The night janitor was so freaked out that soon afterwards he quit his job. The library hired another janitor to replace him. When the new janitor went into the basement at night, he too began catching glimpses of the ghost. It wasn't long before he quit his job as well. Ever since then, the ghost has been spotted a number of times. Many people who visit the library also report sudden cold spots, unexplained noises, faucets turning on and off on their own, doors opening and closing by themselves, and the overpowering smell of perfume. Others have noticed books and furniture being moved around and have felt an invisible touch on their hair or earrings. A 3-year-old boy was wandering around the library. Suddenly he came running back to his mother. He was very upset and his eyes were wide with fright. When she asked him what was wrong, he told her he had seen a scary lady dressed up in all in gray. Several sightings were reported by employees who saw the gray lady lurking around the bookshelves. One of the librarians was going by some book stacks when she stopped suddenly. The gray lady was standing right in front of her. The librarian looked away for a second, and when she looked back again, the ghost had vanished. Another librarian went home one night and was surprised to see a ghost standing in her living room waiting for her. Who is the Gray Lady, and why does she haunt the library? Some believe that it is the ghost of a woman named Sarah Carpenter. Her father, Willard Carpenter, was the founder of the library, and when he died, he left all his money to the library. His daughter, Sarah, was left out of the will and never received any inheritance. They say that she held a grudge against the library all her life, and when she died, her restless spirit returned to haunt it. Others claim that it is the ghost of a woman who drowned herself on the property before the library was built. A ghost cam was installed at Willard Library in 1999, and viewers on the internet can watch it in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the Grey Lady ghost. And that is your stories for Halloween. So, hope you guys enjoyed your final day of the 12 days of Hallows Eve, day 14. Hope you guys had a happy Halloween. And I'll see you guys in regular videos for now. And bye for now. I gotta go now. I probably don't have much time because it's probably going to stop recording. So, see you guys.